Hi, this is Craig Stocks here at Utah Desert Remote Observatories. You can find us online at utahdesertremote.com. And it seems like whenever I post what I call a video fade that shows an image of the stars fading into a nebula, people always ask, well, how did you do that? So today I'm going to show you how I do that in Photoshop and in DaVinci Resolve. So let's start actually in Lightroom, which is distributed along with Photoshop as part of the Adobe photography suite, where you get Lightroom. This is actually Lightroom Classic. There's two versions of Lightroom included, as well as Photoshop. And I use Photoshop to do the bulk of the processing of my images, and then I use Lightroom as an overall digital asset management system. It keeps track of all of my photos, whether astrophotography or otherwise. And I also do some final processing and cropping and create JPEGs from Lightroom and so forth. So let's start with this image of M78. And the first thing we need to do is create three versions of this. We want one version that's just the stars, one version that is just the RGB, and then one version that also has the hydrogen alpha added. So to do that, we're going to open this image in Photoshop. And there's a number of ways you can do that. You can right-click on the image and just choose Edit in, Adobe Photoshop, or you can just do a Control or Command E, and we want to edit the original. And if you've watched my videos before, you know I always keep my images with all of the layers and layer groups intact. It makes for large files, but it gives you a lot of flexibility, and you can always come back, hours, days, weeks, months later, and make adjustments to the image if you want to. And I do tend to work very iteratively. I never have a finished image the first time I finish editing it. So let's start in Photoshop now, and you'll see when this opens up, you'll see in the layers palette over on the right all of the different layer groups. There's quite a few adjustment layers as well, but the things that we're really looking at, let me use the disclosure triangle here to collapse. So this is the stars only. And then further down we have the hydrogen alpha and then the RGB at the bottom. So if we want to look at just one layer or just one layer group at a time, as you probably know, we can turn layers on and off with the eyeball. But I can also Alt-click, or that would be an Option click on a Mac. If I Alt-click on that eyeball, it turns off everything but that layer. So now there is our stars. And I think I need to pull back the red saturation on this a little bit more. There we go. Excuse me. Okay, so now that we have our image of just the stars by itself, we want to save this, and we'll just save it as a JPEG because we're going to use it to make our video. So I'll go to File and Save a Copy, and we'll just change the file type to JPEG, and we'll label it Stars 1. So now we have that created. Now let's turn off the hydrogen alpha, and there is our RGB only. So we've got stars and RGB, but no hydrogen alpha. And again, we'll just do a File, Save a Copy, and change the file type to JPEG, and this will be RGB. And lastly, we'll save the complete image with the hydrogen alpha. So again, we'll just do File, Save a Copy, JPEG, and this will be finished image. So now we're done in Photoshop with these edits, so we can just close this, and I didn't really change anything, so I don't need to resave the image. Let's go back to Lightroom now, and we've added 3 new images to this folder to this 2024 folder in Lightroom. And we need to now bring those into Lightroom. And the easy way to do that is we'll go to the 2024 folder and just right click on it over here in the folders section and just choose synchronize folder. And what synchronize folder does, it will go through and it will find any new photos that aren't in the catalog. It'll add them to the catalog and actually put us into a view looking at just the new images that we just added. So when this opens, we'll see the 3 images that we just added, and those will be added to the library view in Lightroom. So there's our stars only, there's RGB, and here's HA, so the finished image. So let's do just a little bit of basic processing on this. I'm going to go to the Develop module, and the first thing I want to do, we'll look at just overall tone, color, contrast, and see if we want to make any changes to that. And it looks like maybe I'll darken the blacks a little bit to, you can see there's just a little bit of a gap here on the blacks, so we can grab the black slider and move it to the left, which darkens the blacks. And let's open the crop tool, and since we're going to do a video, let's do a standard video format of 16 by 9. So we'll go to crop 16 by 9, and we'll just adjust the crop window to give us the image that we want. And let's say that's the size and the image that we want. Now we want to just copy these settings from the original to these other two so that they all match. So to do that, and over here on the left we can see there's a sync settings, and if I use sync settings, it'll give me a menu of what settings do I want to synchronize. Let's just synchronize everything, and now they'll all be cropped the same so that the stars will line up, everything will line up between the 3. Lastly, let's export these, and you can see I've got all 3 selected. And export is where you would create a derivative file. So in this case, we want to create a 1920 by 1080 JPEG, and I have a saved recipe to do that. So this is going to save it in my website JPEGs folder, and it's going to save it as a 1920 by 1080 JPEG with the Utah Desert Remote Observatory's logo applied. So there's the size. Just click export. System's running a little slow with the screen recorder running at the same time. But it's exporting these 3 files as JPEGs. And now we just want to take those 3 files into a video editor of some sort. Since you already have Photoshop, that's an easy way to do it. So we can go into Photoshop as soon as this is finished exporting. It's an exciting video watching a slow computer get bogged down trying to export 3 JPEGs. But as soon as this is done, we'll go back to Photoshop. And Photoshop has a fairly okay video editor. If you're familiar with Photoshop and nothing else, it's not bad. You can do some basics. Overall, though, eventually you may find if you do a lot of video, you'll outgrow it pretty quickly. So let's go to Photoshop, and we want to open all 3 in the same document. And to do that, we'll go to the scripts under the File menu and load files into Stack. And that will bring up this dialog where you can browse for the files that you want to load. And it's done in 2 steps so that you can, if you wanted to select files from more than one place, you could. So what we're doing is building a list, and we'll just go to that same website JPEGs folder, and find the 3 files that we just created. And we'll take those 3, click OK, and then OK again. And there is the finished image, the RGB only image, and here's the stars image. So to put these into a video in Photoshop, we need to open up the timeline window. So go to Windows and Timeline, and that will open up this window at the bottom. Move my picture out of the way. And you have an option here. You can either create a video timeline or a frame animation timeline if you're doing like a time lapse. In our case, we want to do a video timeline. So just click Create Video Timeline. And by default, it put all 3 pictures on the timeline. And this is if we play the video, we'll see it's just a fairly short video that's just showing the one that's on top. Now, if I rearrange these a little bit, and I can just use the spacebar to start and stop the video. Let's rearrange these. Let's put the one with the hydrogen alpha at the top. And so now we've got the HA on top, and then the RGB, and then the stars. And let's just grab the HA and move it to the right, and then let's move the star or the RGB to the right. And now if I play the video, you'll see there's stars, there's RGB, there's HA. That's a little abrupt. So let's do a fade, and to do that, in the tools over on the left, this icon on the rightmost icon will do a transition, and the one that we want, I'm just always in the way here, the one that we want is a fade, so just click and drag that down. And now you can see this little ramp function is showing the speed that it fades. So let's move the HA over a little bit more, and let's drag a fade over to it. Now when we look at the video, now that fades in, and then the HA fades in to give us the complete image. And you want to make sure that the one below extends beyond where it's fading so that you don't get a little bit of a jiggle in there. So that's a way to do it in Photoshop. We would just then go to File, Export, Render Video, choose the file name, the folder, and the video settings, and so forth, and then export or render, and it'll create the video for you. I like to use DaVinci Resolve, which is you can get it as both a free version and a paid version. And for me, the free version does everything that I need. And the reason I like DaVinci Resolve is it gives you more flexibility on the length of the transitions, where Photoshop sometimes has its own idea of how long a transition should be. With DaVinci Resolve, if you want a transition to take 2 hours, you can do it. And you would have trouble doing that in Photoshop. So we'll just create a new project, and we'll call this M78 Fade Demo. And it will open up, by default, it opens up in the Clips tool, which you can see is the second from the left icon at the bottom. This is where you choose different workspaces. And the easiest way to populate this is to just, somewhat like we did in Photoshop, we'll navigate with the Windows Explorer to the folder that has our images in it. And we'll just grab these, and whoops, let's grab the right 3 and drag those into the clips. So now that we have our 3 images loaded, we can switch to the editing workspace, and that will create a larger view of the timeline down at the bottom. And now we can just start drag and drop. So drag the stars down, drop them on the timeline, and if we want to make it longer or shorter, we can just grab it and extend. Let's grab the RGB next, and we'll stretch it out a little bit. And to do a fade here, you can see when I select or hover over this clip, there are some control points at the top left and top right, and I can just grab that and drag it, and that will create that fade transition. And here we can preview. If that's going too slow, then we just speed it up a little bit. And then we do basically the same thing with the third one. We'll drag it down here. There we go. Let's stretch out the time a little bit. Give it about the same slope of transition. There's the RGB, and then it will start fading into the HA. Now, to create the actual video from this is a little different than Photoshop. What we need to do is go to the delivery, which is the far right workspace, and we'll give the file a name. So this would be the M. And browse for a location. And I always put these in the in a video folder. And then down at the bottom of that panel, you've got all the settings in here for size and codec and so forth. Add to the render queue, and that causes it to show in the render queue, which is over on the right hand side. And then the last step is to click the render all, which you could have multiple clips in here that you want to render all, and it will go through and render this into a final video. So when it's done, we can go into Explorer one last time. And navigate to that video folder. Everything's running slow. And there is the video that we just created. And you can see it go through from the stars to the RGB version, and then it will fade to the bringing in the hydrogen alpha and fade into that. So there's the fundamentals of how I go about creating those. It's basically just 3 JPEGs derived from the master file, one showing just the stars, and then 1 or 2 showing intermediate steps. Apply the same crop and resizing to each one of those so that they are all aligned, and then using a video editor, Photoshop, DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, whatever you use to create that little video clip. Hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments below. And as always, I hope you have a great day today and an even better night tonight under a clear, dark sky. Thanks.